Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. I'm about to introduce someone who is no stranger to the public broadcasting world and to the world of broadcasting and overall. She is Paula Zahn, the co-host of NYC Arts and On the Case with Paula Zahn, which airs
on Discovery ID.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
And it's our honor.
Pleasure to be here in your street side studio.
Yeah, you know the studio.
This is kind of home sweet home to me. This is where we tape a lot of our shows for NYC Arts.
Talk about NYC Arts.
It's probably the most fun job I've had in television.
Really?
It really is.
And you've had a couple of really great gigs.
I have had some interesting ones, some great ones along the way, which I feel extremely grateful for. The way I look at this show is it's the best opportunity I've ever had to interview the best of the best in the world of the arts. So I get to talk to the world's top musicians, actors, dancers, architects,
right,
photographers, and it doesn't get any better than that.
And
unlike my old world, where I could sit down and do a half-hour interview with someone, I would know the reality was that it would be edited down to a minute-and-a-half segment. So in this format, I can have thoughtful conversations. And as you know, you have to sit down with someone for longer than a minute and a half to have something interesting come out of it. So it's a real luxury to be able to do this show. And we're really proud at a time when it's so difficult to get money to cover the arts, that we have this wonderful time slot that's gotten the show a lot of attention, and the show has traction. So people are actually looking to the show and looking to us to be sort of the ambassadors of culture in New York and point out to them where some of the most interesting happenings are going on.
And NYC Arts, your co-host is?
Philippe de Montebello, a name that's familiar to a lot of folks in the tri-state area, a gentleman who ran the Met for many, many decades.
Absolutely. By the way, NYC Arts
guy.
can be seen on WNET, NJTV, the public broadcasting station in New Jersey, and WLIW. Can be seen all around the 13 world, if you will. I want to ask you a little bit about your career in broadcasting. When did you know, Paula, that journalism, broadcast journalism, would be your passion?
By the time I started my freshman year of college, I knew that this was what I wanted to do. I didn't know exactly in what form, whether it was going to be print, radio, or television. But I grew up in a family that, or at least parents, who were very invested in ideas, and I think they inspired all of us to care about what was going on in the larger world around us. And in high school, I started doing a lot of creative writing, and I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. I attended a public school that was very forward-thinking in the way it exposed us to this vast world around us. And they were very keen on having debates about current events. And that roped me in the beginning. And by the time I got to college, I knew that this is what I wanted to devote my life to. I wanted to be a reporter.
When did you get to New York?
A long way into my career. My first reporting job was in, where was that, by the way? The Dallas-Fort Worth area, started in the Fort Worth Bureau. I was a crime reporter. I had my Datsun B210 equipped with CB radio.
Wow.
With a police scanner. And then I moved from that market to San Diego, to Houston, Boston, all in local television, then Los Angeles, my second coast-to-coast move, and my first network television job was with ABC News, based in Washington, D.C.
Paul, talk to us about the fact that cancer has impacted your family, and it's caused you to be very committed and involved in an effort to be helpful.
I've really tried throughout my career to be helpful. The irony of my interest in cancer coverage is that one of the first major sponsored series I did in television was in the Houston market when I was working in local television. And our local television news station partnered with a chain of hospitals and some drugstores to provide free cancer screening tests, and we also processed them for free. And as a result of our series, over 100 people in our audience ended up with positive tests. Now, some of those were false positives, but over a dozen people ended up having life-saving surgery. At the time that I was doing reporting on that series, I found out that my father had been diagnosed with stage 2 lymphoma. So I was dealing with that shock, and then 2 weeks later, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then the news just got worse and worse that year. By the end of the year, 4 members of my family had been diagnosed with cancer in various stages. So as I witnessed their battles, and I saw all the stages that they had to go through as patients and family members had to go through. I decided that I would use this wonderful pulpit I had in television to try to better educate the public about the importance of early detection, about the importance of early detection, as I said, and how to navigate the system to find the best treatments possible.
But you have that platform, but not a lot of people do anything with their platform. You chose to.
Actually, a number of my colleagues, I think, have been very effective in taking on health causes because their family members have been.
Is that a responsibility you see?
It's a nice compliment on your part.
But you see it as a responsibility.
It is a responsibility. Now, it depends on how much of your personal life you want to open up to an audience. But I was the one who routinely, wherever I work, would have assignment editors just rolling their eyes as you came bumped up against October. And they say, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and how many more mammograms, stories are we going to put on the air? And
are there ever enough?
Every time that you did a report, you would find somebody else out there who hadn't seen it before, and you could save a life. So I've found it extremely gratifying to know that we just don't report the news, but you're also given this great ability to help enhance lives and change lives, and when you have the access to this wonderful medical information that you and I have had through our careers, there is an obligation to share it.
On the Case with Paula Zahn, again, can be seen on
Investigation Discovery.
And we're going to run some videos. We talk about this. Talk about that series. And it's so much different than NYC Arts, I'd say, right?
Oh, you'd say?
Yeah.
I
would
think
say.
I have, and you can tell me if I'm correct. Probably have one of the more bifurcated existences in television.
I'd say so.
So for Channel 13, I'm covering the best of what humanity can create and what it can offer. And for Discovery ID, or what we also call Investigation Discovery, I'm not only reporting on the depravity of human behavior, we're also looking in an acute way at the legal system and how these murder cases are adjudicated, how they wind their way through the system, all the expected twists and turns as families demand justice. And I think one of the most gratifying things about doing this show is the reaction that we've gotten from families whose lives have been so dramatically affected by their traumatic losses. And their stories are so inspiring because sometimes they're going up against a very harsh legal system with limited resources, and they never give up. And we love celebrating the heroism of members of law enforcement who retire long after cases have gone cold and come back to the cases 20, 30 years later when DNA evidence is finally solving them. And it's a very, very gritty show. The legal issues are very complex. It's very interesting.
It's interesting. You talk about what's gratifying because you talk about the network side or the cable as well as the network side. Your career has also been at such networks as?
CNN.
Oh,
ABC,
yes.
remember CNN?
I heard.
first day on the job, 9/11, if you might remember.
Yes. Wow. CNN, first day on the job.
It wasn't supposed to be my first job, first day on the job. We were starting a morning show. It was supposed to go on the air in 2002. And I remember when I was actually walking home from dropping my baby, my Austin, off at school, and noticing people holding their phones up, and they obviously were listening to radio reports, or friends were calling them, telling them what they were hearing on TV. Right. And at that point, when I realized that it wasn't just an accident, I called into CNN headquarters in Atlanta and said, "Where do you need me?" And the response I got from Walter Isaacson, who was the man who had just been appointed head of CNN, was, "Well, wait a minute, you don't start for 6 months." And I said, "No, I need to come to work today." And so I was immediately deployed to CNN headquarters in New York and went straight on the air, and as was appropriate, not be introduced to someone new. It was as though I had been part of the staff for a long time. You just jumped right in. Yeah.
And from there, you also did some work at other networks such as?
Fox News was in there, ABC, CBS, and...
So bring it full circle. Come back to public broadcasting. And I set this up for a reason. Not to make it a plug or a commercial, which would be, that's the irony of this. the biggest difference between public broadcasting, and even though you've had an extraordinary career and will continue to in the other work you do, what is it that you love about us in public broadcasting?
How about the fact that you don't have commercials?
What, do you expect one to come up? We don't have any.
I know, you and I occasionally have to go on the air and pray for donations, but no,
we do that. We do that.
I think for me, the greatest gift that public television gives our audience is its quality. And as a reporter, the fact that I can spend an hour with a Yo-Yo Ma and a Daniel Barrowman and Aunt Sophie Mutter, all these wonderful musicians that I have the privilege to interview, to know that what ends up on the air is a real conversation and not something that is edited down to minute points. And I think that has value to an audience. But the production value that you see on public television and the content is very different than what you're going to find in cable news. And I don't mean that pejoratively. Everybody has different tastes in television, what they want. But I'm really very, very proud of what
you did. I'm sorry for interrupting. You did something with Steve Martin, right?
I did.
Can we run the clip with Steve Martin?
Sure. Was your banjo always part of your comedy act?
Well, when I started getting to be able to go up on stage, I didn't have enough material to fill the 15 minutes required. I didn't have that much comedy material, so I put the banjo in to kill time. And then it just sort of stayed.
How great.
And it stayed and it stayed and it stayed. Now, how great is that to not only be able to sit down and talk with Steve Martin about his comedy, but about his love of the banjo? And you know how he fell in love with the banjo? It's so funny. He grew up out west. He started 15 years old hanging out at Disneyland and started listening to the musicians. They were performing, and he heard the banjo, and he said, I'd like to sign to the banjo. And that led to a lifelong love.
And you're only going to find that out on NYC Arts.
NYC Arts.
How great is that? And by the way, we have time to let people know this. You started playing the cello at?
The age of 5. And I'm so excited. I'm performing right across the street at Alice Tully Hall at the end of October with the Sejong Orchestra.
See? This is where you don't find these things out.
Come see us.
We should let people know that you're performing at Alice Tully Hall, playing the cello.
Practice, practice, practice. Look at this. Look at those
So you're not
fingers.
just a great journalist. You're a great musician, a performer. You're an artist. And you honor us by being part, not just of this show, but of the public broadcasting family. And by the way, who brought you in again?
Neil Shapiro, the big guy running.
Yeah, he brought us all together.
WNET.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Steve, and continue good luck with your show.
Same thing to you.
And will you guys make sure you keep this really nice for us next week, because we're coming back in here.
Look at that! Yes,
No,
we'll keep it clean. We'll clean it
They're
up.
much neater than we are.
Don't worry, we'll clean it up. We're back right after this. After Paula Zahn gets us to clean things up. We'll be right back after this. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Holy Name Medical Center, Berkeley College, Qualcare Inc., NJM, Wells Fargo, New Jersey Natural Gas, and by the Russell Berry Foundation. Promotional support provided by Commerce Magazine, and by NJ Biz, all business, all New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.